Welcome to Nick's Right Podcast, where Nick is always right, old millennial Gen Xer. This is going to be an awesome episode, and I want to go ahead and get our sponsors out of the way so we can get right to it, because we have actually someone running for Congress in District 2. District 2. So we'll get to that here in just a second. Patriot Mobile. The
Yes,
best cell phone service out there.
Patriot Mobile.
I could go into a whole novel of why they're the best cell phone service out there. But if you go to patriotmobile.com/NRP, also, if you just go to patriotmobile.com.
Just keep it a short story.
I'm trying. At patriotmobile.com and enter the code NRP, you get a free month. Live Audio. As you can see, I remembered my cord, Live Audio headphones. If you go to Live Audio, livvaudio.com, put in the code NRP, you'll get a 15% discount. These are premium headphones. They are a pretty penny because they're worth every penny. Made by Mark Clayton, ex-NFL player, ex-Sooner. Awesome guy.
Yeah,
awesome
but they're
headphones.
awesome. And you look good wearing them too. So
yeah. They get looks all the time.
Yeah, they're awesome.
And they sound amazing. Okay. Out the door.
Anytime Fitness, come see me. The Anytime Fitness location in Grapevine. I am the manager. I'll give you a membership, a discount on membership, discount on sessions, and some free sessions as well. Call me at 817-442-0228 and come talk to me. Tell me you saw me on the podcast and get some free sessions and some discounts on gym membership.
All right.
Together we will meet goals.
He didn't know if he was going to do that or not. So I'm glad you decided to do something, Nick.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, of course you don't.
What are you talking about?
Because you didn't know if you were going to actually do the pitch for Anytime Fitness tonight.
Yeah,
because you even changed your shirt.
I kind of flew off the cuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got one special guest, one returning guest. Welcome back, the beautiful Kaylee Campbell.
Yay.
Can we get some candid applause?
She's the one that candid applause from the corner over there. Candid applause? No. Kaylee Campbell is the one that I came across who is uncovering all the H-1B visa fraud that's happening in Texas, and I've actually gotten more info to where it's not just in Texas.
Of course not.
Yeah, it's actually kind of all over. And then she got me connected with a guy named Nick Plumb, who's running for Congress in District 2 of Texas.
Do not tune your podcast speakers. There is a third Nick.
Third Nick
on the podcast.
This is historical
today.
for Nick's Right Podcast. This is the first time we've had a third Nick on the podcast.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Glad to have you.
This is what, like your third podcast you've done?
Yeah. Third one.
So how's it going so far?
It's it's different, right?
Yeah.
You go from kind of living behind the scenes, doing your little tech job, working from the garage at home, not seeing a whole lot of people, to now you can search yourself on the internet and
you're very Googleable.
And a picture shows up. Yeah.
Well, you say a little tech job from home. Are we talking Walmart?
No, I was at Amazon.
Yeah,
I was the head of AI enablement for the global compensation team for Amazon.
Oh, that was your little tech job.
That was my little tech job
from home. Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
That's a little tech job.
Say that again. It was AI
enablement. So what that means really is ensuring that the folks that within the corporation or within the organization know how to use AI, and specifically how to take AI and make it usable for our business cases. Probably the best example I can give is, I don't know, if you think about Grokpedia, right? So Grok used to go and fetch all this information from Wikipedia, and it was crazy because anybody could curate Wikipedia.
Right.
So if you're using AI for compensation decisions, you need to have a knowledge base that contains the company's policy. It has to have the right type of benchmarking. You may have agents that you're building to go out and pull this data in to build your benchmarking, all your customer or your competition surveys, et cetera. So it's how do you go from where we are pulling data using third parties to actually building that out in an automated way, controlling the governance behind it, making sure that everything that's built is you understand what you're getting out of it.
Oh, yeah.
That's fabulous. So in other words, you have a big brain, like a large hat size.
I live in my head a lot. Yeah, for sure.
Your head a lot. All right.
Well, with that being said, what made you want to start running for Congress?
Yeah, I think I'd really put it down to my daughter's story. So I've got two kids. One is 19. She's a freshman in college. The other is 16. She's a junior in high school in Houston. The 19-year-old, when she was getting ready to graduate from high school, goes through what a lot of kids go through, right? They start applying to schools, to colleges. She, unlike me, had done everything right. You know, I went off at 18 into the Army because I played football. I wasn't super focused on academics.
You had a small brain back then.
Small brain back then.
But
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, going hard. You know, that was my mentality. But my daughter, I mean, she did it all right. She's known since she was 8. She wanted to be an OBGYN. So she graduates high school with a 4.5 GPA. She got 32 college credits while she was in high school.
My gosh.
Varsity swimmer, head of the French club, state knowledge bowl champion, every extracurricular you can imagine. On her spare time, putting on fentanyl awareness things because she saw kids overdosing. You know, like just crazy academic record, right?
Yeah.
She lives with my ex-wife in Colorado, but always wanted to go to University of Texas in Austin because she wanted to go to UT Med School.
Sorry.
So she applies there.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I feel it. That's how I feel now.
Yeah.
But she applies there and gets rejected, not just to UT Austin, but the entire UT school system.
Really?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
all the UTs,
All
UT
of UT.
Tyler, UTD, UTA.
All of it.
You would think she would be the student, the iconic
ideal
student,
student.
ideal
Yeah, yeah.
student
Yes.
that they're
Yeah.
looking for with a GPA that I didn't think was possible. 4.5?
Yeah, that's every AP class that you could take.
Wow.
And then
That's
you know,
crazy.
mastering them all.
And
So-
they didn't just think, well, she doesn't need us.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they thought.
Yeah.
Same thing A&M thought though, right? So then she applies to A&M and gets the same treatment there. She applies to SMU right down the road here from us, founder scholarship, but it's still, you know, $50,000 a year after that.
Private school.
Yeah, Tulane, another one, lets her in. Johns Hopkins, every school on the West Coast, basically all of Colorado because they've got like a standard approval thing. That's where she ended up. But that really pushed me into looking deeper than just what I saw at work, right? So anecdotally, I had seen my team shift from 95% American to within, 5 or 6 years, I was the only one. I started to think maybe there was something more going on here. Dove into the data, and what I saw is just absolutely alarming. At UT Austin, in the last 9 years, white female enrollment is down 21%. White male enrollment is down 30%. Asian female enrollment is up 50%. Asian male enrollment is up 25%. There are more Asian females at the University of Texas in Austin than there are Black and Hispanic males combined.
Whoa.
Right? That's crazy to me.
Whoa.
Because look
That's
around the
insane.
state. Look around the state. What do you see more of? Black and Hispanic males or Asian females?
Black and Hispanic. Well, especially
right.
Hispanic for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for there to be more Asian females at UT Austin than there are Black and Hispanic males. And I'm just using that as a rubric because, percentages can skew. You could say it's a big percent of a little number. But when we look aggregates, it's a really telling story. I think there was a problem, right? So I dove into it even further. Where are these kids coming from? Well, like in Frisco, you've got Independence High. It's like 70-something% Asian. It's a 3,500 kid school. So their top 6%, which is auto admitted, is very large. I graduated from high school in Ingram, Texas with 54 kids in my graduating class.
No,
Wow.
You know what I mean? So how many of those schools are completely offset by Independence High dropping 6% of their all Asian student population into UT? Well, it's significant. But then you back out further and it's just the takeaway from the data story is it's harder for an out-of-state student to get accepted into UT than it is for a out-of-country student. And then what you see when these kids come over as a dependent of an H-1B,
here we go.
they're H-4 students, right? So they're classified as residents. They're not international students. So all those safeguards that we have in place to try to make sure that the universities remain, X amount American or X amount in state are all out the window because we have a ton of foreign students classified as Texas residents eating up all these slots in our universities.
All right. I got a couple of questions for you.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
You
That's
say-
great to record. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, I know. Right. It's a very human thing to
go ahead.
bodily
Go ahead.
response
Yeah,
to
go ahead.
infection. So you say residents. Does that mean citizen? Is that equal to citizen? Do they come over as H-1B, or if you want to make his head explode, HB1 residents? But are they considered a citizen?
Well, I mean, that's not a measure, right? When you go look at how UT classifies their students, it doesn't show citizen, non-citizen. It's resident or international student. So you're resident within let's say the Hispanic community. I'm sure there are a lot of residents that are not legal citizens that attend.
I see.
But resident effectively is, I've been here a couple years. I've graduated high school from in-state.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pay resident level tuition. I'm not classified international. So there's you're not held by that 5,300 head count they try to make on the international
all right.
side.
Well, hang on. Let me
one more
ask
question.
a clarifying question when it comes to all that. Just a clarifying question. Hang on. So when you're saying when it comes to H-1B visas and then H-4s, they're getting a better deal than in-state residents.
I mean, I don't know that I'd say they're getting a better deal. They're getting the same deal.
Same deal as in-state. So if I was in Oklahoma and I wanted to go to Texas, like if I lived in Oklahoma and I want to go to Texas, I would be paying more.
Yeah, you'd be
H-1B.
paying out of state. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
So that's where like my daughter, she in theory would have been an out of state student for the first year, but then I'm a veteran. So the Hazelwood Act would have applied years 2, 3, 4.
Mhm.
So maybe UT would have lost money in the long term versus, the H4 resident from Frisco that's attending there.
Wow.
So they may not be getting a better deal there. It's hard to say, but they're certainly getting easier admittance.
Yeah.
Or acceptance.
Well, it raises the question, are they getting accepted because of their outward appearance, or are they getting accepted because of their educational qualifications?
Yeah, that's the question,
That's
isn't
the
it?
ultimate question,
Yeah.
isn't it? So they're just because are they approving the H-1B visa or the H-4 because that's my biggest question. Why are they approving so many?
Well, yeah, because if they're not qualifying people like his daughter who have over the top qualifications to be able to be admitted into the school, those should be the set standards, but yet they're admitting these other people who, problem number one, aren't even technically American citizens, for example. That's a huge issue.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a huge issue. And when you say Asian, you mean Indian,
I mean,
Pakistani,
I would
80%, 90%.
like whatever the demographic is in, like, let's say Frisco, the Independence High School.
Yeah, that's
right?
definitely
It's South Asian is the bulk of it.
Yeah.
That's Indian.
Yeah, it's Indian.
I think when a lot of people hear Asian, they think Chinese,
Oh,
Japanese,
that's exactly where my
Vietnamese,
mind
Korean.
went.
Yeah.
Was more Oriental than
But by Asian, you're talking about the demographic of Frisco.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically.
I mean, that's what you see if you go down to
Oh,
UT.
absolutely,
It's a very Indian population there.
Yeah, my brother lived there for 10 years.
Yeah.
And when he moved in, probably 2011, 2012, it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it was. And it was
I'm getting an influx of messages from people saying, "Yeah, I've been here since such and such time," which was like over a decade ago, and they said I've seen an incredible transformation of like just the actual residents.
People that move into
So-
their neighborhoods and their neighbors are white, and then in 10 years they go outside and they don't even talk to their neighbors anymore because sometimes they don't like to talk to other people. Certain groups, that is.
So that sounds. So it was your daughter that got you. wanting to
Yeah, I
run.
mean, for me, when it was happening to me personally, it's hard to say that it didn't impact me. It did. But also I was like, I'm a grown man. I can deal with, you
Sure.
don't think about it the same way as you do when it's your daughter who
yeah.
objectively has done everything right.
Sure.
I'm real roll with the punches. I'll figure out whatever I need to. I'll be fine. This really changed it.
Okay.
When you take that and you got to back up, right? Like, I don't want to say those folks that are getting into UT, the Indian kids, they're not qualified, right? I think objectively they are. They graduate the top 6% of their high school class. The problem that I have is when corporate migration or corporate hiring forces this migration to change the demographics of these mega high schools, which then has a downstream impact of changing the institutions, which then has a downstream impact of changing who gets the jobs, who gets the house first, who has their families first. It's a big cycle, right?
Yeah.
And someone needed to take the time to actually think about it all, and I think that's one thing I learned at Amazon is how to think about big problems really well. To actually absorb yourself, hyper focus on it, look at how all the pieces connect together. And I hadn't seen anybody in politics making a case that I thought was even coherent on what was happening or what we needed to do to stop what was happening to protect the nation. So
Did you make that first video based off of the information that he put out there with those websites?
I think some of the stuff that I was seeing was from him firsthand. Yeah.
Yeah, because I first got onto the whole situation whenever she made her first video, and I saw that concentration of H-1B visas that were like she
That big map.
showed like the whole U.S., but it was like concentratedly outlined in Texas.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't even know about this. What the heck is going on? Which she came on the pod, and then we just started unraveling all this stuff, and then a whole plethora of stuff just started coming out of it. Like I got contacted by a source of mine at a dealership where he left the dealership because 50% of his customers were H-1B visa applicants, and they had better credit than your run-of-the-mill American. Like if you're starting out at the age of 20 wanting to go get a car, you don't have any credit, that means you're going to have to put half the money down, or you're going to have to get a cosigner. But if you're an H-1B visa applicant, you can come in because you have top-tier credit, get a 4% interest rate. So like that started it, and I'm guessing it stemmed all the way over into what you say, like the educational system, the corporate system of what she's uncovered.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, even like let's look at it, right? If I don't speak English at home and I get hired here, now my kids qualify for preschool for free. If you're an English speaker, born in Texas, that's all you talk about at home, your kids don't get preschool for free. What? So now you have another structural advantage, right? Your kids start their education process early. I mean, the whole system is actually been built to facilitate and incentivize this mass migration. I call it the MUD GDP, the line must go up type philosophy, where the entire focus is this top line growth. It's not about health of the nation. Is the middle class succeeding? It's, do we have GDP going up year over year? And as long as we do, everyone just seems to be going along with it. Super complacent.
Those are actually some of the comments that I get on my Instagram from Indians, for example, who are like, well, America's GDP is going up. It's raising Texas's GDP. Yeah. I'm like, okay, let's talk about the 50 other issues.
It's kind of funny. The last people, and I've discovered this recently over the last probably 3 or 4 years. You always grow up thinking that the bottom line is the most important thing, right? Especially when you're in a capitalist society. You run a business. It's the bottom line. And more lately, I've discovered that the bottom line is starting to play second fiddle to other sort of ideological bents. I mean, you see it with. I mean, it really played against Miller Lite. Or Bud Light, played against Bud Light. It's playing against Disney. It's playing against so many other corporations. So when they say, well, the America's GDP is going up, yeah, but what's our culture doing? What's our society
where's our
doing?
Culture going? Because it's being replaced by someone else.
It's being replaced, yeah. And I was on your. I know the article you wrote that you're referencing about your daughter, which I found fascinating. It's a good article. I was on your website. And I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about your website that I think you've kind of already started to answer. You use different terminology than a lot of people that I've seen running for office. And one of the terms that I would say you coined that I want to ask you to go a little more into is systemic betrayal.
Yeah.
I thought that was a kind of a poignant term. Describe what you mean by systemic betrayal beyond what you've kind of already sort of laid out.
Yeah, there's a saying called it goes, purpose of a system is what it does, right? So if you think about a system that is leading to our replacement, it is leading to senior people like me losing their jobs. It is leading to offshoring. It is leading to some of our most talented youth not getting into the funnel through universities. You have to look at what that system's doing, right? It is displacing Americans. So the purpose of the system that we have seems presumably to displace Americans. I think that's a systemic betrayal, right? Our government derives its authority from citizens. We elect them, we empower them, we send them to DC to represent us. When what we receive in return is rules and laws, regulations that absolutely do not benefit us, do not protect us, and in fact benefit everybody but the American, that is a systematic betrayal.
That's a good coined term.
Yeah. I read it and I thought, oh man, I'm going to ask them. Because we've all heard, when they want to beat their drums against the right, let's say. Yeah. And I don't want to go into right or left, whatever.
Well, but they'll say right or left.
Yeah, they'll say systemic racism, and they'll talk about systemic greed as, in the DNA of our capitalist society. And that's just them beating their drums against their opponent to try to put their opponent in a bad light. Never heard systemic betrayal though, and kind of caught my eye.
Yeah,
well, it describes the Democrats to a T, because they're the ones, and not just the Democrats, but any of the corrupt politicians, and they're the ones that created these systems. They're the ones that wrote it into law.
Yeah, I mean that's where I was going to say it's both sides, right?
Yeah.
My little door knocker says both. Something like both parties had a chance, both parties failed. Right? Mm-hmm. It's not. Where we've gotten to, we can't place fully on the left or fully on the right. Yeah. They all have allowed it to happen. state level, federal level. They've sat there. You know, I look at Texas, right? You've got the state reps who a lot of times have said, well, this is a federal issue. Well, you've sat there in the Capitol right across the street from University of Texas in Austin, and you have seen this happen. You don't get a pass, right? And if you didn't see it happen, you're not qualified for the job. You need to leave.
Yeah.
Straight up, right? And so I don't know, both sides, left, right, doesn't matter. No one gets amnesty here.
I think that just nails down the point that we need to introduce term limits.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, because I saw a video today with freaking Bernie Sanders. Man, I want to. That you want to talk about having a punchable face?
What's your problem with Bernie Sanders?
He interrupted and said the guy went over Mullen.
Okay,
you know who Mullen is? Is he from Oklahoma?
Yeah, Mullen's Oklahoma.
Because I know he graduated from Oklahoma State. Is from what I remember, but I didn't know if he represented Oklahoma.
Well, you're gonna make me doubt myself, but I'm pretty sure he does. Yeah.
But I think he's the first one in Congress that actually stood up to Bernie Sanders. It's like, you're the problem. Yeah. Like Bernie Sanders smarted off to him. And then you could see him like collect himself. He's like, and then he just went at him. And I was like, oh, finally, like one time.
I haven't seen this.
Dude, it's a great video. I would have to look it up to see if we can get Michael to pull it up. Michael, can I send you a video? Okay. Ask a question.
Excuse me.
I actually have a question. So when it comes to the stuff that you sent me a message today, when it comes to going out to the houses and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
The systematic betrayal that you uncovered, what she's suggesting, going to these houses and
or businesses
businesses.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's a very fine line to like show up to people's houses and be like, where's your business? I want your business, to try to get them to answer. But
yeah, I mean, didn't Sarah Gonzalez do that?
Yeah. So what I did is I pulled a bunch of the LCA and H-1B filing data. It's all open record. You can go on uscis.com and you can, extract that data.
Ooh, say that again, that website?
Just USCIS.
USCIS.
Yeah, you can just search USCIS H-1B data and it all pops up.
Okay.
You can go in and download it into a CSV or an Excel file. Well, I took all of that, and originally what I was doing is I was pulling all of that and I was just building out pivot tables, and I was, doing the high level, like looking at the spreadsheets, trying to figure it out. And you can see things so like glaringly clear right off the bat that I knew there was more to this. So I went ahead and built out a back end, built out a UI, this map. It's fraudreporter.visadata.org, where you can go in and you can pick any state in the country. You can drill down to your zip code. You can find the addresses of the employer, right? So this would be the business, that body shop that operates out of a house. You can click on it. You can see the LCAs attached, and you can then tell if the employee is supposed to be working there, working elsewhere. But I put out a guide that a lot of people didn't know about. It's fact sheet. It's Department of Labor fact sheet 62F, as in Foxtrot. And what it does is it outlines the protocol for a public access file request. So within 24 hours of an employer filing an LCA, and this isn't even the H-1B being approved, this is of them filing the LCA, they have to have produced and maintain a public access file. And that PAF is supposed to explain, what jobs they're hiring, what they did to try to find Americans, how they determine their wage, what benefits are offered, yada, yada, right? None of them are maintaining these files. I mean, before I put any videos out about it, I went and knocked on, 30 different doors. 99% of them weren't there. The one that was there didn't have an LCA. Called me back a PAF, called me back a couple weeks later. We're ready for you to review our public access files. They had tried to redact out all the names, which is something they're not allowed to do.
Oh, man.
But basically, I validated this little tool that I built is it's freaking rock solid, right?
Yeah,
as far as identifying where these body shops are. There is zero reason the federal government can't be doing this. Like the number one thing that they could be doing to fix enforcement is worksite visits. It's so easy. They're not doing it. So my goal was create 1 million little Nick Shirleys out there, right? Give them the tool, give them the evidence, give them the protocol, go knock on the door, ask for the PAF that says you can take pictures of it. That's your excuse to video, yada, yada. I have now gotten 170 investigations turned into me within the last 30 days.
Wow.
Of different businesses, and when you add some of these have 50 employees, that's a pretty significant amount. I turn them into State Department, USCIS, DOL, doing it monthly is my frequency in turning them in. I don't know for sure if any of them have been dealt with, but I'm doing my part. And that's kind of my whole message of going to Congress, right? I know that passing bills isn't easy. We see there's some good H-1B bills that are stalled, the Pause Act, the end of the H-1B Act. I forget what that's called. But what I do differently than most of these folks is I have the ability to build a data story, right? And I think through the power of oversight, give me a little bit of access to data, more than what I have from public access, and I will blow the lid on this thing. I will expose it and really make sure the public understands what's happening.
Yeah.
When you say blow the lid on this thing, give us a definition of what this thing is. What is that?
I
know systemic betrayal.
Systemic betrayal.
Right? Like we can.
I said systematic.
I know you said it twice.
The knowing and willingness of the government, at least the Texas government, or maybe USCIS, may not have a part in it, but the shortage of investigations that are not happening within all of this is the systemic betrayal.
Yeah.
All right. Before we go on to the video, I want to ask some clarifying questions for the people like myself that don't know what this means. What does LCA mean?
Yeah, it's a labor condition application.
Okay.
So that basically says, I'm going to hire a person in this role. It falls under this SOC, which is the Standard Occupational Code. So, I'm going to hire an SDE that falls under this IT role. I'm going to pay them this much. This is their work location. Pretty straightforward stuff, right? There's no requirement that the employers say that there's not an American qualified before they get there. So what this requirement really is doing is it's ensuring the employer is paying the employee at the prevailing wage level, right? It determines what that prevailing wage is, what should be fair, what should be relevant. There's all sorts of workarounds there, right? If you're hiring an IT person, you're hiring a developer, you call them a IT associate, right? It's a different family. You pay them lower. If they're senior, you call them junior, you pay them a lower level. So even that part is pointless. But you'd asked earlier, like, what is this? More than just a systemic betrayal. It's the problem is you can't stop solely at the H-1B visa, right? There's the student visa, which has the optional practical training program, the curricular practical training program, the STEM extension on OPT. You've got the L1, the O1 visas. You've got the R's, the U's. Like it doesn't matter. It's a whole alphabet of replacement out there. And when you look at the way that they work and stack on top of each other, there's like no coherent way to manage it, to be quite honest, right? Because a person can hop from student visa, which they sign under penalty of perjury. They intend to return home after their studies, onto a practical training, onto an H-1B, onto a loop for 20 years, non-citizen, just here indentured at their employer's, beck and call. So the whole thing is broken, and all it's doing is hurting the Americans.
So would you say that if this was actually led by not just the Democrats, but also the corrupt politicians, would they be doing this kind of like how Joe Biden opened up the border? Are they doing this for votes?
I don't know if they're doing it for votes, because the system doesn't necessarily, the reason I would say they're not doing it for votes is because 70% of these folks are coming from India.
Okay.
And the backlog is so long on the Indian population that it's a real long game if that's what they're doing. A lot of them are sitting there 17, 20. I mean, I've heard cases at 25 years, people waiting for their green card.
Okay.
So then you can't even vote until a few years after I think it's 5 years.
So you're not allowed to vote if you're on an H-1B visa?
No.
Oh, okay.
But what you are doing is you're shaping representation, right? So in Texas, we have 38 congressional districts. Each one's about 767,000 people. You pound in a bunch of H-1Bs into Frisco, their H-4 kids, their B1, B2 grandma, grandpa, whoever that's hanging out in the neighborhoods. You've got a lot of heads that are getting counted, right? That's a lot more representation being allocated to that area. Now
so more Congress people to each district if there's more people.
Texas, like for example, Texas gets more total head count.
Okay.
Texas gets more congressional seats.
Right.
Then if you have an area in Dallas that will say, 70% of the population is illegal or legal, but not citizens, you now have 30% of that population actually voting and determining who wins that seat. So you look at areas like Seattle, where you've got a bunch of big tech companies, a bunch of people that are ineligible to vote. You have really the only folks that remain there are super liberal. Now that's how you get these super liberal policies.
Right.
And now, you have enough cities or zones, districts, whatever, in a state that turns the state to that color. You get enough state, like it's pure math, right?
Yeah.
And I feel as if these hubs are really happening in areas where you have a high liberal population that you can bring in and exploit their voting power, right? Expand it by bringing in more people.
Okay. Would it also fall under the Muslim takeover as well? Or is that a totally different situation?
It's similar in that they're not usually coming across the border illegally.
Okay.
Right. I think they're coming in here on some sort of protected status, maybe an asylee or a refugee. There are a handful, I mean, more than a handful that come in, worked with a bunch of Pakistanis and Iranians, et cetera, at Amazon that come in on those visas.
So it sounds like that's a different problem.
I think it's a different problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like, as of recently, like when all of these issues started rising, it became two separate issues. It has the same effect on a lot of people, but it's two separate issues because also those two separate issues don't even like each other as well.
Right.
So it's like two separate issues, two big things causing massive rifts in Texas. And it just like messes up the whole issue like times 10.
Wow.
I think the core thread is lack of assimilation from both of them, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's different factors, right? So those of the Islamic nation, they're not going to assimilate to the American nation, right? Like it's ideologically they're different.
Purposely do not want to.
Yeah, they don't want to. But then you have the visa holders that are here on a H-1B, which is a non-immigrant visa. I actually believe it's fair and reasonable to not expect them to assimilate, right? You're here temporarily doing a job with the expectation to return home. That's the initial term is 3 years.
Yeah.
But again, that systematic betrayal is broken and it allows somebody to stay 20 plus years on that H-1B. So now you're here long enough to have assimilated, but you have that back burner mindset of I'm here temporarily, right? You're not going to build that allegiance. You're not going to assimilate. So people a lot of times talk about, well, they're not assimilating. And I think we have to back up and say, well, we don't necessarily want them to, right? The better answer may be they go home, they leave.
Yeah. Well,
so what would that be your magic wand remedy for the situation? Like if you could snap your fingers and fix it, what would that look like?
Yeah, I'd start a moratorium immediately, right? And the reason I don't want to snap my fingers and pass some law is I think it's going to probably be halfway done if it's done that quickly. I'd advocate for, I'm calling it the Reclaim Act. It's restoring employment and citizenship laws through accountability, integrity, and moratorium.
Oh, wow.
And it has reclaim, spells reclaim. Yeah. That's nice. I thought of that.
Nice.
It's got some things, right? The first thing is it's a 2-year pause on all new visas, work, student visas. And during those 2 years, and I picked 2 years because that's the length of a congressional term, I would like the INA to be completely rewritten. And I would call it an Immigration Naturalization Act, right? I would call that a modernization effort. And the reason it has to be done, not just the H-1B visa, but as a collective whole, is if it's done in silo, your H-1Bs will slow down. They'll just start using the L1s or the L1 visas, right? L1 is intercompany transfer. So that, someone could come work in Canada for a year and then come down here. The O1 is extraordinary ability. You can write a paper and, meet the requirements for that. Secondly, you have to layer on concerns of offshoring, right? If you lock down the visas too much, a lot of these corporations are addicted to cheap labor. They're going to offshore the jobs rapidly. So you've got to build some data protectionist laws that say data can't, employee health, customer financial data can't leave our shores. That'll bring the jobs back here. And then you also have to look at AI, right? So the INA was last touched in 1990. Something like 20% of businesses were connected to the internet in 1990.
Oh my God.
Right.
Now
and we're rolling into this globalized AI era with that same immigration policy. It's ridiculous.
Oh, then it just doesn't correlate.
Yeah.
Made back in the 90s.
So I'd keep it paused for 2 years with that caveat. It auto extends for a year at a time if we can't rework the INA. I think that's the only way you bring both sides to the table.
Yeah.
To do something, right? Is the worst case for a lot of people is it stays shut forever, right? Mm-hmm. Well, let's make that the threat. It's going to stay shut forever unless we can collectively agree on something that puts Americans first in our immigration policy. I think we can get there, but it's going to require that forcing mechanism to bring people to the table.
So, what would the growing pains of that moratorium be? Meaning, I guess, how dependent has our industry or our economy become on H-1B visas and out of international
dependent?
How dependent on that have we become? Because if we put therefore inclining that if we put a moratorium of 2 years on it, there would be some growing pains
Yeah.
that we'd have to get past.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing, right? People talk about growing pains. Well,
What? I'm sorry, man.
I'll,
You got the-
When he
Yeah.
asks questions, he likes to get a little bit more dramatic with his questions.
that's good. Really drag it out there.
this guy here is the king of dragging out questions.
Sure,
he'll ask
sure.
a question for 15 minutes that requires a yes or no.
Oh, sure.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. You forget the
Growing
question?
growing pains are probably pretty good. So let me back up. At Amazon, where I worked until 4 weeks ago, I don't know, a few weeks ago now.
Okay.
Same day I was let go, 16,000 people were let go. And
Wait, you were let go.
I was laid off, right?
Wow.
Amazon did a big wave of layoffs in October, 15,000. And then in
they all
January,
white?
I don't know, probably. And then in January, they did another 16,000. That's a big deal, right? And during the same time they did that, they're the number one H-1B user. They're the number one OPT, CPT,
That's what I was
STEM
gonna
user,
ask,
all of
yeah.
that stuff, right? They also are offshoring like crazy. That's a bad deal. So I think, at least in my case, I could have done any of the jobs the H-1Bs on my team were doing. Period. Right.
Yeah.
So, then you have to look at how our American laws work. It's actually would be illegal right now for them to have just targeted everybody that was on an H-1B and fired them instead of me, because that would be national origin discrimination.
What? So it's illegal
Like,
to
that's
fire
stupid,
H-1B,
right?
but it's not illegal.
No, I didn't say it's illegal to fire them, right?
Oh,
You
okay.
could have laid them off, and I'm sure some were. But you can't just say, I got to cut 16,000. I've got 16,000 H-1Bs. Let's just let them all go.
Oh,
But I'll tell you what, if there was a moratorium that said, you know what, there's no more H-1Bs coming in for 2 years. Anybody who's expiring during that time frame, they're departing, period. Well, they would have planned differently, right? You wouldn't be terminating the Americans. You would be building into your plans this natural attrition
Yeah.
that would absorb and ease all of these mass layoffs. So that's like in the tech sector. Now you've got areas like Dallas ISD, which hires, I think, 1,290 teachers, something like that, on H-1B. They're doing that simply to undercut wage. They would have to go to their school board and say, look,
Yeah.
we're going to have to pay
Yeah.
more than 58 grand a year, whatever, 64, whatever it is they pay. We're going to need more budget. That would create some pains, but also that money wouldn't be leaving the country through recessions. It would be being spent in the community, and it may balance out over time. Then you've got the medical profession. And I think that's the one that people like to tell the story about. They say, if we don't have H-1Bs, we're not going to have enough doctors. Well, that's crap. I mean, it's
Let's
absolute.
see.
It's a garbage argument, right? We've had artificial caps on residency forever that was driven by the medical association
Yeah.
to create this false narrative that they need to bring in foreign doctors to yada, yada, yada. I think that pain would cause some creative thinking, and maybe we would then resolve some of these longstanding issues like the residency thresholds, et cetera. So,
Wow. Okay. All right. So speaking of the term limits we were talking about earlier, we're going to watch this video on is it Mark Mullen? Is that his name? Mark
Yeah.
Mullen?
Mark
Okay. And this is actually the extended video. So you guys sit back and watch because it's going to be entertaining.
I'm saying let's go after it. Let's look at it. Let's question what we're doing. Let's look at the healthcare system. We can agree on that one. I just don't want to socialize it. But we can agree that it is absolutely not affordable. 100% not affordable. Yet it was supposed to be affordable. That's what we sold by Obamacare. So how about we work together and say, hey, so scrap ACA, admit it doesn't work, admit you guys made a mistake, and let's work at something with President Trump to make affordable healthcare healthy and affordable for everybody. But there's zero chance you guys could do that.
He
Zero
said
chance.
Trump.
Yet everybody we bring up here, you guys chastise for trying to make changes. God forbid we change and go after and try to fix our broken system. Anyways, I ranted too long. Let's talk about some.
Yes, you did.
I'm sorry, I didn't ask your opinion on that. And if I cared about your opinion, I would ask you, but I don't care about your opinion.
Well-
You're part of the system. You're part of the problem. You've been sitting here longer than I've even been alive. This is your problem. You should have fixed this a long time ago. You've been railing on it so long. What have you
I've
been doing?
decided not to run for Surgeon General. You're the nominee. I've decided
That
not
is
to accept
definitely-
that nominee.
That is
nomination.
definitely something.
Is that face not a punchable face? Like the Bernie Sanders face? Is that not a punchable face?
That's a punchable face.
That's
man.
an extremely punchable face. Anyway, would you
I
say
love that.
that
That's
you would
awesome.
be able to do the same thing if you were having to bring this bill that you're talking about before Congress? Like, could you approach it that way?
yeah, I mean, I think so,
Okay.
right?
Yeah,
It's very defendable, right?
Yeah, yeah.
There's data to back all of this up. It is systematic betrayal against the American people that needs to be resolved, right? I think the difference between this and the ACA is
ACA,
Affordable Care Act, which he was talking about there. At least that was kind of debated, right? I remember that being a big story. The H-1B and the visa thing has just kind of evolved over time behind the scenes, right?
Well, it's not really caught anybody's attention until, you did your thing and then created all the little Nick Shirleys to go out there. And so to be honest, I didn't know anything about it. And then we've been talking about going to these, houses just like Sarah Gonzalez did. And I will say it kind of terrifies me.
It does. It's a little, that one video where she goes to that guy's house and he's like, I'm calling the police, blah, blah, blah. And
and she was like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we could go up to anybody's house and knock on the door and ask them questions. Whether that's morally okay or not is up for debate on social media. But if you're trying to do this investigation and you're trying to expose this stuff, and then they have that behavior that she caught on camera, then it makes 10,000 other people who see the video raise some questions. And then maybe it also encourages them to go out there and do their own investigating. But it's not going to like news is so quick to die out. And there's so many topics of conversation now, as of what we've been having this conversation about H-1B for a few weeks now. And some people are still doing it. Some people have moved on to the next thing, but you have to maintain consistency, especially if you want to actually expose this stuff going on. And so the big move that it's going to take is to document this stuff and continue to show people instead of just sitting like me in my car and talking about it. Like, people will get tired of it eventually. Yeah, you got.
Well, I actually got contacted via all the messages I got from a lawyer that lives in New Jersey who quit his job to go to law school to fight the H-1B visa fraud that's not just happening in Texas, but the entire U.S. And I tried to run by all of my theories, with the how they get cars and their Uber blacking, and then my other source said that tech companies will fire somebody who's making $350,000 to $375,000 so they can hire an H-1B visa that only makes $10,000 a month. And so that feels like another like systemic betrayal because at the end of the day, if they're willing to sit here and pay non-Americans a percentage of what you would pay an American, that's got to be one of the biggest betrayals. Yeah, I agree. So how do you feel about taking this head on? Because I feel like you're a lonely guy.
Yeah. I feel like I am a lonely guy, right? Yeah. It's one of those, when I first started speaking out about it, I'll just give you the situation, right? So I got I transferred into the team I was on, and I was given head count, and they were all H-1B holders, right? So now I'm managing a team of everybody that's on H-1B, and I went along, like it was okay for a year or so, because my daughter's thing hadn't happened yet, right? I didn't realize how prevalent this was. You live in a little tech bubble, and you think this is just happening maybe in my situation, my team. Then I started getting the paperwork sent to me where I had to certify what they were doing, and I couldn't really read the paperwork and certify that they were doing things that an American couldn't do, because I knew there were Americans that could do that. At that point, I gave up my team, right? So I go from being a senior manager to a principal level. That's what happens when you go from having headcount to being an individual contributor in tech. That kind of ostracized me from my team, right? And then I get to this point where my team is now picked up, or my larger team is picked up, that I'm on X, and I've got a little bit of a profile there. I'm saying things that are all from the best place in my heart I could be as an American, right? They're not rooted in hate. They're rooted in, I am pro-American, and this is our country, this is our nation, and we should come first, period. That's where I'm coming from. But it creates an issue where I get forced to submit a conflict of interest form, right? And I think that was actually an eye-opening moment for me. Here I am as a tenured employee at this company, saved them billions of dollars, have built really big things for the company. And now I have to run a conflict of interest form. And guess where the first level reviewer is?
HB1.
In India. Offshore in India.
In India.
And then the approver is my visa holding VP from India. So it's this whole thing, right? And then at that point, I knew I was on the next layoff target, right? And January hits, and I wake up at 4:45 in the morning, locked out of my computer with an email sent to my personal email that says, you no longer work for Amazon. Your role's been eliminated. So yeah, that part put me pretty lonely. And then, as far as the party goes, I was pretty early on hammering this legal immigration being as big of an issue as it is. I am all like deport them all as far as the illegals go. There's no amnesty for the tax paying guys that are going to work. So it puts me, I guess, on the farther right side of things. But I've tried really focusing everything around the economic piece. There's a finite amount of jobs. There's a finite amount of housing. Americans should come first in both of those, period. And I'm just trying to hammer on it. What's surprising to me is the divide in like the voter piece, right? If you're under 50, you're drinking up what I'm saying. You're like, I see it. It's happening. It's touching me. And then there's like this kind of gray area between like 50 and 60, where they could go one way or the other. If you're over 60, they seem to be thinking, oh, legal migration's great. Bring them all in. We've got nothing to worry about.
Doesn't make any sense.
So it's, I don't know. It's a weird.
They've been here the
spot.
longest. You'd think that they
I figured they would be like more right.
Yeah.
But then again, if they're all 60, 70 plus, then I'm going to assume that the majority of them are retired and they
just don't want to
sit
deal
at
with the
home
problem.
and they don't really have to deal with it unless they go out to go grocery shopping or anything like that.
They don't understand the world of podcasting where all the news gets illuminated.
That's where all the news gets now. Are you a church going guy?
I don't go to church. I grew up in the church. My dad's, so I was adopted by a Christian minister who was born in 1930. His church secretary wife was born in 1933. I was born in 84. So I was raised like I was going off into 1950. The day I turned 18, my dad gave me when I was 16, he asked me if I was going to seminary, right? So I said, no, it's not for me. I don't like being up in front of state, in front of people talking.
Jokes
ironic, right? So I turned 18. He said, boy, you got 4 choices: Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps. I went off into the Army. For church, thing that really pushed me away from it was a lot of the debate around predestination. When he retired, had a big predestination thing come in. And I don't know.
Dude,
left me feeling all sorts of ways.
Well, because you probably were talking to a Calvinist.
Yeah.
So explain predestination before we.
So predestination is talking about Romans 8, where it says those who he foreknew, he predestined, talking about salvation. And so Calvinists believe this system of God has already predestined those to be saved who he wants to be saved.
Oh, interesting. So it's got
in other
nothing to do
words,
with free will.
Exactly. Exactly. So, and I've studied that because, growing up in the Baptist church,
I don't agree with that at all.
No, I didn't say I agree with that. I said I studied
I don't like it.
Yeah, because it's
That's
not
why it's
true.
Calvinism.
What if I wasn't predestined?
That's the
It's
whole
not
problem.
true.
That's because it's not true.
I don't like it.
No, but this is why they believe that. Because not why they believe that, but this is Calvinists who believe that they don't believe in free will. Like my brother's a Calvinist, and he's actually going to be on the pod here in a few weeks. We're bringing on a woke pastor.
Hey, that'll be fun.
We did a reaction video to his marquee. He put F ice in Spanish on his marquee, and he's got a rainbow in his logo. And I did a video.
He's gay.
Well, we don't know he's gay.
He's gay.
Is this the pastor from like Oak Lawn Methodist?
No, Fort
Worth. West Side Presbyterian in Fort Worth. Yeah, and he responded to our video, and we didn't say anything bad. We just referenced Romans 13, obey the laws of the land, and then he responded to that video and called us bootlickers. Yeah, because we're licking the boots of ICE, and I'm like, no, they're doing their job.
I made a pro ICE video, and I kept getting like gifs in the comments, and I was like, how am I a bootlicker?
Oh,
yeah, I was like, what the heck?
So that's what his stance was, and so I just made another response video saying, hey, come on the pod, let's talk about it.
Yeah,
and he almost backed out twice. But he's confirmed he just doesn't want to be blindsided. And I'm like, well, no, we're going to have a conversation about ICE, about Romans 13.
Yeah.
What he doesn't know is that Jay's going to be on the Jay. He is a Calvinist.
Well, he knows now.
Yeah.
Well,
no, it's pre-recorded.
All right.
Jay is a Calvinist, but the way Jay believes, bringing it back to Calvinism, is like you don't have free will. That's distracting. You don't have free will until after you're saved. Then you have free will to sin. And
but
I'm
if people are predestined to be saved, does that mean that
that's the problem?
That means salvation doesn't exist because if you're
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So
make sure I'm following.
So basically, God's just up there pointing his finger at people.
You're saved.
Going,
you're not.
You're good.
Well, they'll say stuff
I'll
like,
flip a coin on you.
Well, hang on.
Yeah.
Just to defend them, they'll say stuff like, you're not going to be saved until God calls you to be saved. That's the terminology that they use. Which completely debunks, or not debunks, it completely goes against free will.
Well, he calls you to be saved from the very very beginning.
Exactly.
So,
But it's still your choice to do it. Anyway, stop interrupting me so I can get past this, Nick. But when it comes to the
I
actual
apologize.
Romans
I'm sorry.
8, shut up. When it comes to the Romans 8 and it talks about predestination, the way to look at it is that we're looking at an omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient God, an all-knowing, all-powerful, everywhere at once. Something we can't understand.
Ooh, I saw a video on this.
Yeah. So therefore, if we're talking about, what Paul says, by the way, it's Paul saying it, not Jesus. Okay. Not to discredit Paul. Paul was great, but he's talking about predestination, or he's talking about how they are predestined. So if you look at it from an omniscient, omnipresent, what was the other one? Omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent God, then he already knows the decisions you're going to make.
Why is it called Calvinism? Who's
A
Calvin?
guy named John Calvin created it.
Okay.
And there's like different degrees you can be, like
I see. Okay.
2.1 degrees of Calvinism or whatever. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's kind of like Mormonism.
Sounds like a
you can
mathematic
have,
it's
religion.
not as bad as Mormonism.
You can have one wife or two wives or three wives.
Or an extra planet.
Is that true? An extra planet?
I don't know.
They do believe that you're going to get your own planet as you perish.
I thought that was Scientology.
Who goes
No,
to
that's
the planet?
Mormonism.
Goodness gracious.
If I die, if I'm a Mormon and I die and I get a planet, is there anybody else on the planet?
That's a good point, right?
Because if everybody dies and gets their own planet,
What's
then are
worth-
you just your own planet?
You got to create
You-
technology.
well, you get to
go the
rule
next
your own
planet. It's not
planet,
your
so
planet
maybe-
anymore.
I don't know. It's definitely a religion we can sit there and pick
All right.
apart.
So anyway, you didn't like predestination ism.
Yeah. I mean, and it was this whole moment, right? Like my dad retired. The guy that came in and took over the church was, big into Calvinism, and
Sure, yeah.
and it just kind of like pushed me away from it. And then I don't know.
So you
making
went into the army.
But yeah, went into the army, lived a bunch of life, worked overnights a bunch, those 70-hour week jobs. And it wasn't something that I made a lot of time to, go to church.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the ultimate question is Christ King.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, that's the ultimate question. Let me ask you 3 questions before we move on. And these are the 3 questions that I ask everybody on just to see which way they lean. You've already heard the question.
Nick's his litmus test.
My litmus test. First, we're going to pray because I forgot to pray. So, Lord Jesus, thank you for letting us be able to come here and discuss these things. I ask that you would speak through us, that everyone would understand what we're saying, and that you would shine a light on the stuff that's going on to where it would get out and get the attention of the president, to where he would pause the H-1B visa situation going on, to where there's no more systemic betrayal. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I got it right. Systemic.
You did.
I got it right. Not systematic.
What's the difference between systemic and systematic?
Systemic is of the system. Systematic is of the system.
That's not.
That was awesome.
I have no idea.
That made me more
He's
confused.
BSing right now. is what he's
Systemic
doing.
and systematic. I don't know. That's
Okay,
the
so 3 questions. When does life start?
Conception.
All right. Second question, how many genders are there?
There's 2.
Okay, and then what is a woman?
Somebody born a female.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no. All right, you're far right, bro.
Far right. That's far right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that, and that
You're a real
isn't that
extremist.
sad though?
That is crazy.
That's sad
Yeah.
because I asked the same questions to a guy who lives in LA. He's a he heads up a post-production house for film, and they're the ones that do The Chosen.
Okay.
So we were looking at them to finish the post-production on our movie, 426, coming out soon. And I was having this political conversation with him, and I asked him those 3 questions, and of course he answered the same way you answered. And he's like, Nick, those used to not be political questions.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and that's the sad part, that they are now.
Mm-hmm.
And
This is why I don't care if anybody calls me a racist or a Islamophobe or a homophobe, because all of those don't mean anything anymore.
Yeah.
They just mean I disagree with somebody. That's all they mean.
Oh, one of the points that I've made on, like the little candidate forums and those types of things is there's been this real fervor for the emotional arguments. And I, for lack of a better way to describe it, I say one side wraps things in a Jesus flag, the other side wraps things in a rainbow flag. And the purpose is to get us to focus on the far left, the far right, while everything in the middle just falls to pieces, right?
Yeah.
And that's that systematic betrayal. We're sitting here worried about a 0.1% issue of trans whatever, or, the 10% that think we need to have open borders. Like that is what has got all the attention. Meanwhile, entire industries are being hijacked. Universities are being hijacked. Neighborhoods are being completely converted and transitioned into something that's not American at all. It's like the sock if you have your kid take the picture and they got the sock monkey that they squeak, so they look at it and smile for the picture. That's what I feel is happening is we're smiling for the picture, right? Well, everything's just going to shit down the middle.
I agree with that. And as you were talking, I was thinking about the whole H-1B visa thing. And right now it seems like it's majority Indian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
About 70%. Yeah.
70%. Okay. So that's a big majority.
Yeah.
So would you say, like if are the Indians, I have to ask this because it's on my mind. Are the Indians more of a threat or are the Muslims more of a threat?
Man, it's tough, right?
Yeah.
Because the whole, and I can never say it right. It's Hinduvuta, or Hinduvta. It's the Hindu nationalism is a really big problem.
Okay.
And I don't think everybody has any idea as to how big of a deal it is, right? So we
know the Muslim side.
We know the Muslim side, right? Yeah, yeah. I mean, as a military guy who's been overseas, I understand the Muslim side. I get it. It's scary.
Yeah.
It's Gurjat, I think Gurjat, had these big riots back when Prime Minister Modi was the head of the BJP in India. They went and did this big Muslim cleansing there, right? So the Hindus go and had 72 hours to literally kill Muslims in the street. They're beheading them, lighting them on fire. Thousands of them dead.
Hindus did that to the Muslims?
Yes.
Wow. So what you said is, like you said, that they hate each other.
Well,
no, they do. They do, right?
But they're living within 2 feet of each other up here in Frisco.
It's not going to be good.
Yeah.
But then, more recently they went after and burned the Christian churches, etc. Right? The Hindus.
The Hindus heavily persecute Christians as well, but not many people talk about it.
Okay.
They're very, subtle. You don't have the Quran talking, you don't have the literature out there that's as forceful in its language. It's much more subverted. And it's every bit as dangerous. You go in, we've lost gas stations, we've lost hotels, we've lost the tech sector. You can only come into a country and take so many industries and not be a threat, right? I think we're at the point where it is a soft invasion. It is a significant threat. They're very politically active. You've got those that do have citizenship or all, every county, you've got them running for office, local office, that starts taking tax bases, starts, green lighting their own projects, building their resume, moving upward in the political realm. I think they're a massive concern.
So would you, I kind of was thinking about this whenever you were explaining it. It seems like the Indians were taking over the job and tech industry, and then the Muslims were trying to infiltrate through local government. But it sounds like the Indians are trying to go through local government as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a playbook, right?
Okay.
Like people seem to understand how to figure this out. If you have a big voting block, the first thing you do is you start taking over local offices, right? School board, the county precinct commissioner, whatever. Your little voting block gets those people in place that they may allocate taxes to your causes, which makes your block more powerful. And you just in time rotate up. And they do vote as a block. That's what I'm so concerned about. If we get into some sort of amnesty or whitewashing the legal status for all this big, massive backlog, which Dan Crenshaw had supported, right? Changing the backlog, which would have made a bunch of these Indian folks eligible to vote in the near future. You would now have a very powerful voting block in Frisco or in Sugar Land, Texas, that would be able to potentially sway elections or at least drive things closer towards their interests.
So Dave Crenshaw, not Dave, Dan Crenshaw, he was pushing to get legalized voting.
He was pushing for a country cap removal, right? So the reason these Indians are on H-1Bs for so long is there's a country cap. And because 70% of the H-1Bs are coming from India, they then ride on this backlog forever. I couldn't even tell you what year they're processing from right now, but it's probably 12 years ago. Like if you entered 12 years ago, 15, maybe that's who's getting the green cards at this point. Removal of the country cap would put more to green card, which then puts them closer to naturalization and the ability to vote. So,
man,
yikes.
Okay, go ahead.
So they say that what was it? 4%, 6% of our national population is Indian.
That has to be wrong.
That's what they said. And that can't be right. So I'm wondering if these, not citizens, but what'd you call them earlier? People that come from India.
H-1B visas?
Yeah, H-1B visas and the like. Are they being accounted for in the national population documentation or
The census.
consensus. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Is there a bunch of them that we just don't know are here?
I hear anecdotally, right? And I mean, this is where not seeing all the data you don't know. I mean, I hear they a lot of times classify themselves as different things, multiracial, which could be a demographic that pulls off of that Asian percentage, sometimes black for, different advantages, whatever it is that they're applying to. But I think the big thing is, and this would be one of my requirements in the Reclaim Act, is that we have some sort of entry and exit tracking. We don't really know who's here, right? We know how many visas we issue. We don't know who leaves. That's a problem, you know, especially when you have the visas like the B1, B2, which are good for a big period of time and you can come and go as you please. Yeah. We don't know who's here. We don't know what the real count is.
On like a smaller scale, I know we're talking like statewide and nationwide, but to reference the DMs that I've gotten on social media, people who work anywhere from tech companies to pest control companies to any type of company where like home inspection is involved or things like that. I'll get messages from people saying like, hey, I went into this house and there was just 10 rooms full of mattresses, or this entire upstairs portion of the house was full of mattresses and there's multiple families living in this one house. And I know that's such a small scale and it may be a handful of cities up there, but at the same time, that kind of brings into the topic of how many people are actually here that we don't know about. Because if they're all just hoarding themselves in houses, it just, I don't know. They're
not being accounted for.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So,
have you seen the article on the Indian diplomat that I think is American now? And then she kind of tried to blow the lid off of how the Indians are gaming the H-1B system.
Is that the one that she was in the consulate?
Yeah.
I've read that.
Yeah. So Indians using is something called Rishwat. I don't know how to say that.
Don't ask me to pronounce it. I can't pronounce any of this stuff.
Rishwat. You know how to pronounce that?
Probably
no.
Rishwat.
Rishwat. Okay. To game H-1B program, says U.S. diplomat who served in India. And then it says an Indian origin American diplomat, I can't say the name, has urged the need for the U.S. to immediately pause its H-1B visa program pending a full program audit alleging systemic fraud and the use of the word rishwat, and it actually means bribery, by unqualified Indian applicants to game the program. Writing for the anti-immigrant think tank Century for Immigrant Studies, she cited her experience as a junior officer in the U.S. consulate in whatever country, stating that a majority of Indians nationals ages 22 through 45 use the H-1B visa as a perfect loophole to enter the U.S. with fraudulent or inflated credentials, displacing qualified American IT and STEM workers.
Yeah. I mean, I would say 3.5 out of 5, 7 out of 10, 70% of the visa workers that I worked with couldn't do the job. Right. And
really?
Yeah, easily. And the way it works is, let's say you have a team of 5, right? And they're all Indian. There's 1.5 people on that team that can do, and one that's really good, and there's one that's like half good. Well, that 1.5 will do all of the work for everybody else. They will
so they can continue pulling in the paycheck.
Well, maybe they're getting cutbacks, kickbacks. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anecdotally, on my team, I had 2 guys that went to elementary school together in India, hired onto the same team of 5 people. That's like a 1 in 55.4 billion chance that could happen organically, right? Like if I would have had somebody from my little street, River Park Drive in Ingram, Texas, working beside me, it would have been it would have been the good old boys club, nepotism. There'd have been investigations. But when we get 2 guys from India
who grew up together,
wow,
both working on the same team internally at Amazon, that's not, I mean, come on, guys, right?
Dude.
That is rishwat. And it's this whole, I don't know, maybe it's the Izzat thing. Like what you've got is the Indian population says, and I heard this in that Frisco town hall meeting, right? Like this is the USCIS's job to investigate FDNS, the fraud department, whatever. It's up to them to investigate. And if it's not investigated and there is no crime, there is no crime. Right.
Wow.
And it's very clear USCIS has not been investigating the way they should.
Right.
So they operate under this level of impunity where it's like your government doesn't think it's big enough to do anything about. We're going to just play the laws. We're going to do what we do.
They're going to game the system.
They're going to game the system.
Yeah.
And
because we're allowing it.
We're allowing it, right? And then that drives this monetization through bribery. You saw that, I don't know if you saw there was a story, a guy that hired a ghost employee that did nothing.
No.
It was a subcontractor for United Health. He hired a ghost employee and then got kickbacks of $1.2 million over X amount of years from this employee. And I think this is what happens. And especially I think this is what happened during COVID, right? You've got an Indian gets into a position of authority in an organization. They're a senior man, say they're an L7 in a tech company. They start building their empire, right? Oh, I need SDEs. I need business intelligence engineers. I need business analysts, whatever. They create a bunch of roles. They hire a bunch of people. Those folks maybe weren't really needed in the first place, right? They're collecting work. It doesn't matter if they're skilled or not because they weren't actually needed. They're here. Their spouse comes over. Their spouse then on that H4 creates another business. That business then hires another H-1B. And I think the part that's worse about this is the contracting abuse. I'll try to give you an example. So my sister's 21 years older than I am. She worked at Dell, one of Dell's first employees. And, Dell was one of the first places that really started bringing in a lot of Indian tech work. At that point in time, those kids she didn't grow up with a computer, right?
Right.
I did, right? So computers were more like just inherently something I could do. That whole generation didn't. So they needed to hire in the skills to do that. Well, over time, they hired in these skills. They built these contracts. These contractors then said, I need more headcount to manage this software as a service contract or whatever component they built. And they grew these contracts out to massive amounts of headcount. And year over year, if things are going fine, they just budget that expense into the books the next year. So that's what these shitcos, the shell IT companies are. They've got contracts for, I don't know, the cafeteria software at your high school or your kid's high school. They've got the contract for business analytics for the Texas Railroad Commission.
Wow.
Like things that you build at once and you forget it.
Yeah.
You don't need to do 40 hours a week times the 10 people on that contract. Well, they're all just hanging out, sitting here, living pretty, collecting those, dollars.
Wow. Yeah.
That's
That
insane.
is an uncalculable number of man hours that are getting billed to somebody for nothing.
Yeah.
Well, they're getting billed and they're doing nothing. So in other words, where's this money coming from? It's just the tech companies are paying this out to these
that was my
ghosts?
It's not just tech. It's every business, right? Like there's one. I mean, I'll use that school cafeteria thing as an example, right? There's a shell IT company that builds the lunchroom monitoring, cash register software for, I'm sure Dallas ISD, HISD, whatever. They sell it for $20,000 a semester to each school. And then they sell it with like a managed, as the software as a service where your IT call support if something goes wrong, right? And that's billable hours. Well, nothing's going wrong with it. And for one, it's a tool that you could build yourself with AI, right? You could go vibe code that cafeteria software and save all that money. But because, and this is where, having been a store manager at Walmart and managing big at Amazon, like I understand how P&Ls are looked at a, profit and loss statement at a high level. When you're managing millions or billions of dollars, your year over year comp consistency is what you're really looking at, and if each year for the last 15 years, I've spent $5 million on software, as long as I'm spending $5 million on software, I'm okay. Right. Like that's the mentality a lot of people have. They never drill into that 5 million. Well, that 5 million is fueling these shell companies, these bum contracts unnecessarily.
Okay. Did you have a question? I felt like you had a question.
I'm just learning.
I'm learning too, and that's why because I want to crack down on like all these different even contract employees or just regular employees are getting paid all this money, but yet they're not doing the work. And what I'm wondering is how, because I can understand through the contract way because they're going to a third party to get them to pay to do something, and they're pocketing that money, but they're they're selling them something they already have. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you another example, right? Like Railroad Commission has a handful of people, right? They have some analytics service.
Sure.
I build out a dashboard and I build out the auto refreshing of the data. I build it once, right? And that dashboard is good and doesn't need to be touched unless there's a feature request that gets built on later. And maybe I can fix that in a couple minutes. But I own that dashboard. My company owns that dashboard. I'm the contractor.
Yeah.
But you want access to that dashboard. You need it. It's business critical. You're going to pay me monthly.
Right.
Right. But there's no work being done.
Okay.
Right.
So,
because it's been done at one point and you're just paying. It's like a retainer you're paying.
okay. So they're
It's
paying for all
software as a
this.
service.
It's software as a service.
Yeah, that's the key term right there. It's software as a service. Like someone's paying you to service something you created for them, but no service is necessary.
Right.
It's just indefinitely being paid for
Wow.
software as a service.
Yeah, and you build in that SaaS requirement with your licensing, right? You license in the software and you require the software as a service piece.
Yeah. So what would be an example of software as a service? Actual software as a service. What would that be? Any idea?
I mean, one that I bought recently was called Anaplan, right? It was a financial planning system. It's like Excel on crack, right? You're able to bring in and build these multi-cube, it's a multi-cube relationship with all these different variables, yada, yada, yada. Well, when you buy Anaplan, they tried to sell software as a service through Cognizant, which is one of these big body shops to help you build out your original Anaplan model and all of those things. So if you go and buy the Anaplan as a product, they want to bundle the Cognizant, which is that software as a service contract, that extra third party that would really do nothing, but they'd be on call if you need them. And having dealt with things like that in the past, when you do call, they don't know what's going on, right? You have to spend a bunch of time with them to give them the business context, which then creates more billable hours, yada, yada. Yeah. They've gotten really good at hiding behind the curtain of software development, right? It used to be super complex before AI. Used to be very complex. None of us knew most of us had no idea what was going on. So they could say, I need more time. My requirements aren't clear, yada, 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 yada. Just rack up the billing. Well, they got really good at it. And we got really gullible. And the veil has dropped because of AI. And I think that's where we're starting to be able to see it.
Okay. So I hate doing this, but this is just for me. I'm having a hard time understanding put everything you just said in like extreme layman terms.
Explain it like a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
I mean, I get the majority of it.
I can understand but I wouldn't be able to regurgitate it. So because he's right. Your brain's big, dude. And so, and I can see the frustration. You're like, why don't people get this? You know what I'm saying?
But that would be something that like average viewers need to know so that they can understand in layman's terms what's actually going on. Yeah.
So when it comes to like what you experienced at Amazon with all the H-1B visa and how they were kind of pocketing the money compared to the contract work, like explain it in extreme layman terms to where, like you said, a 5-year-old can understand.
Yeah. All right. You've got different types of offenses that are happening. You can't say the H-1B is all of one thing, right? Okay. In big tech, I think what you have is mass corporate driven migration. That is really a buddy gets into a high level of, high enough level to hire. It's not their finances. You've got, legal on standby that's willing to fill out this paperwork that gets taken advantage of.
So if I can clarify on that, you're saying this is for corporations.
Yeah. Your Amazons, your Facebooks, your AT&T. Like well, AT&T uses a lot of subcontractors. So I'll use them as the contractor example. Okay. But the big tech where they're first party, they go and sit in it, they have an Amazon badge, they work for Amazon. I just think it's been a bunch of overhiring to really help bring their friends here.
Okay.
And I think there's been a lot of fake credentialing, help with interviews, ghost interviews, all of that type of stuff. That's a private business. They're not touching tax dollars or anything. You know what I mean?
Okay,
like they're doing their own thing, right? Yeah. Now you've got your AT&Ts, your Verizons, and we'll lump in with them the Attorney General's office, the Texas Water Board, the Railroad Commission, whatever. Mm-hmm. Those companies have contracts that they didn't have in-house IT. They didn't have an in-house development team. They needed something built. It may be a call screener for AT&T. It may be a dashboard for the Railroad Commission. They issue a contract. And one of these IT companies bids this contract. Well, the IT company may or may not actually have employees that work for them. They can go to these bench people and hire somebody, but whatever. They then hire an H-1B person for the contract, right? They may then say, I actually need 5 people for this contract, when really it needs 1 person to do it. They bill for all 5. The owner pays the people that are doing the work less than what he's billing, typically, he or she, right? So they bill $100 an hour times 5 headcount times 40 hours, pay them 50 or 40, whatever. He gets that rake. Now those folks are getting whatever they're getting. They're not always necessary, right? Like when you build a product, whatever that AT&T or the Railroad Commission commissioned somebody to buy or to build, it's built.
Yeah. And they just
they live off of that maintenance contract forever.
Okay.
And
yes, okay.
You buy a car, you buy a warranty. The warranty is not working all the time.
Yeah, but
it
it's
only
there if you
works.
need it.
It's there if you need it.
Yeah.
So that's what we have is a lot of it's there if you need it. And a lot of these folks will get multiple contracts.
Okay.
Right. So they'll be sitting on, this is their legal H-1B hustle. Maybe they go get their wife who's completely unqualified on an H-4 working on this other contract. So now they've got multiple sources of income coming in.
And they're not doing anything.
They're not doing anything. So it doesn't matter if they're qualified or not.
Where does that income come from? That's a lot of money.
Well, when it comes to the contract, it's coming from the like they're hiring these tech companies like I think you uncovered.
This is kind of like what we said on the last podcast episode, right?
Yeah.
Where they'll pay or like, well, no, because I was still asking where does the money come from?
Right. So the LOC, and let me see if I can regurgitate it to the way I'm understanding it. The LOC that's located at a suburban house, they'll bid for the contract work, and then that company will pay that LLC for what they're bidding for. So they may only need one, but they're billing for 5. The company bills for 5 because they asked for 5.
Let's say us 4 offered a service to him for $500,000. I'm only qualified to do the job, but I'm gonna bill him
for all 4 of us to do the job.
5,000 times, or what did I say? 500,000, whatever. Boom, 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 boom. That's what, over $1 million. I'm changing my numbers.
That would be $2 million.
Now he's gonna pay me. Okay, he's gonna pay me $2 million for a job that only cost $500,000.
Right.
Well, all right.
I feel like
we're getting close, right? I mean, the state says I need X built, right?
Yeah.
And they put out a request for proposal, and now I'm a contractor. I come back and I say I can deliver X. I'm going to deliver it with these 5 people, 1 business analyst, these whatevers. I get it. And now this contract's going to cost the state $2 million. Now the state starts paying me $2 million. I deliver with those 5 people. But rather than going and sourcing 5 actual developers, I go and source 1 developer and 4 fakies.
Or
right?
your wife and your kids.
My wife,
right?
my kids, so now I only have to actually pay the real developer, my wife and my kids. They get paid whatever. It all stays with me.
Yeah.
I've got a couple million bucks coming to me each.
But that's where the money's coming from because you said the state's paying for that.
That would be taxes.
So
that'd be taxes.
Yeah.
In the instances where, and that's why Greg Abbott putting this supposed pause on H-1Bs being used for state contracting is relevant, right? You go look at these H-1Bs, you'll see the secondary employer a lot of times is one of these state departments or a university or.
So would you say that these LLCs that she found at these suburb houses, they're the ones that are bidding for these jobs from the state?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's where the fraudulent stuff comes in.
Because they're still allowed to run their quote unquote LLC out of their house. They don't have to have, if they're doing a software company, don't have to have.
No, but the 51 employees that they have, they're just people that they brought over.
Right.
And then whenever they
That's where
bid
it gets
for
confusing.
it, they get the money from the state, and then they can either divvy it up or he gives a lowball offer to all of his employees and he pockets the rest.
And that's why they get
bottom line, it's coming
$500,000
from
houses.
us.
Bottom line is coming from taxpayer money.
Yeah, a lot of times, right? Or it's coming from Verizon or AT&T, whoever's Wells Fargo, right? That's using these secondary. What you see a lot with these shellcos is there's 2 things, right? There's submitting a bunch of LCAs, a labor condition application, so that you get back in the day, you get how do you win the lottery? You buy more tickets, right?
Sure.
That is what this was. It was submit a bunch of LCAs so you win the H-1B lottery. So they would potentially, even without having a real bona fide job, they're submitting LCAs. They create their fake website, they create the posts, they submit LCAs, they increase their odds. Now they get somebody hired. And you've got someone here, but you don't have a real contract. Well, then you turn into a body shop, right? Mm-hmm. You're a broker. You have somebody that you need to broke or to place. So another IT company that happened to not win the lottery, but won the contract, then needs to go hire your guy, right? So you see a lot of these shell company to shell company H-1B movements. Yeah. It's a whole shell game where really what they're doing is they're building a bench, right? People whose names they can put on these contracts. Okay. That's why they want them all here.
Okay, it's starting to make sense. Yeah. It's starting to make a lot of sense. And I think it all comes down to so the money that's coming from AT&T and Verizon, that's private bids that they're trying to go for, and then they can also go for bids from the state. Yeah. And so that would be the taxpayer dollars that they're getting.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I've uncovered entire Google drives where you can go in of these body shops and human brokers, human traffickers, whatever you want to call them. and they've got different forums in real time where you can see like these are the state level jobs, and it's just state contracts waiting for a body to come fill so they can then start
getting
working
the
on
money.
that contract.
Yeah,
Yep.
again, but they do like one person does the job and then everybody else pockets.
Pretty much, right? Because
Are you clicking?
Well, yeah, I'm clicking. I was
Okay.
going to bring up the Indian man who was arrested in Houston
Please.
by USCIS. Him and his wife were arrested. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Human trafficking
I did not.
charges.
No, I didn't see that.
Overstayed visas and something fraud. But it made me raise the eyebrow of, okay, he's trafficking humans into Texas,
So this
trafficking
could
his
also-
friends.
You're saying
Is
this could
that
also be
related?
tied to human trafficking. Is what
Oh,
you're-
100%.
I mean, the visa is labor trafficking, right? Like it is.
It
is trafficking.
They're
trafficking.
legalizing human trafficking. Is what it
If
is.
we just slapped H-1B visa, the H-1B visa program is human trafficking.
No freaking
Labor
way. I did not
trafficking.
think it was going to go that direction, but holy cow.
What do you think HB stands for? Human being.
Oh, shut up, dude. What's the one in the middle for? Because it's H-1B, not HB1.
Human one being.
All right? Sorry, Nick.
There's one of the things I found also is the OPT program, right? The optional practical training after you graduate college, you
Okay.
can qualify for OPT. There are brokers that sell. Let me back up. So you don't actually have to have a paid job to be on OPT. It can be an unpaid internship because it's actually a training program. It's not a work program. OPT.
Oh.
Right? So that's created. There's no prevailing wage protections, all sorts of issues. But if you can't find an unpaid internship, you can go down and call this company in Florida and pay them $79 a month, and they will issue you paperwork that will qualify you for this OPT thing. So when you actually look at it, there's not a huge difference in paying a coyote to traffic you over the border
Oh, my God.
and get a job working under the table at the landscaping business. That's no different than getting here and paying somebody in Florida $79 a month for work authorization to then go work for your cousin's IT shop.
Man.
Oh, my goodness. So what?
You
dude,
can't be the first person to come up with that comparison. I mean, you talk about this stuff like you know about it, like you're using the terminology, the logic, you understand their tactics. You can't be the only person that knows this, especially in Congress or aspiring to be in Congress. I mean, how many people know about this stuff?
I don't know. It started I told you my daughter was applying for those things in December. You remember Vivek had a crash out in 2024. I don't know if you guys were watching. He made some really stupid statements on X, Christmas of 24.
Vivek
Ramaswamy.
Yeah, Ramaswamy. Yeah.
And I was very early, right? In December, I'm publishing all the data on perms and H-1B, year and a half ago. It could be possible that I've spent more time thinking about this than other people. I do have very strong hyper focus, but
you just said,
I don't know.
Oh my goodness, no, because what you're saying is not something we put together yet.
It's a massive deal that this was just said 5 minutes ago.
Yes,
It is a massive deal.
It's because we were just thinking it was an H-1B visa fraud scam that they're just coming over and just fraudulently scamming the American people and getting their jobs. Now it's a human trafficking ring.
Yeah. And the only people that benefit from it are the corporate interest, right? Like it drives this hyper concentration of wealth. If I'm a big company and I can bring in 50,000 people that are indentured, right? They don't have freedom of travel. If I let them go, they have 60 days to find a job or depart the country. They're indebted to you. They are indentured. They are bound labor. I mean, we fought a war over ending this at one point in our history.
Yeah.
And here we are back where even in the wrong spot, we've got 20 plus states and the Chamber of Commerce arguing that the $100,000 fee is unconstitutional or illegal. I don't know what their
That's the
argument
fee
is.
that Trump came up
Yeah,
with.
for the H-1Bs.
Okay.
But they're actually arguing for bound labor, right? In a country that fought a war over ending that. And for some reason, the Republican Party has been able to draw this ideological boundary around it's okay if you pay a body shop, but not okay if you pay a coyote, right? And to me, it's really no different. The only difference is one group learned the system and the other group did not learn the system.
So which group leared the system?
The Indians, right?
Indians,
Okay.
They learn the system. They've got their immigration lawyers here that know how to play the system. They've got, I saw this ad from a realtor that's, there's a neighborhood in Leander that's sold 394 of the 453 houses to Indians in this brand new neighborhood. And the realtor advertises the reason he's able to do that is because he has strong connections to tech and India. Right?
Wow.
They just work the system. That's it. That's literally it.
Okay. All right. Do you want to speak on the lawyer? I mean, because it ties into what he was just saying.
It does. It does.
Do you, I'm asking if you do. Like, if you don't want to, I can totally understand. Okay,
I'll
we're
pass.
not gonna. We'll pass on that one. But just to give everybody some context, it's the lawyer that you can find his website that has submitted.
He
Did I
has
say
the
that right?
highest rate of submissions,
Okay.
and that's why he started circulating around.
Right.
He offers the lowest prices
Okay.
for his clients to be able to come to DFW or to hire him as his attorney
Right.
or as their attorney. And that's how he has allegedly amassed so many clients
Right.
because they can go to him and
Right.
pay a percentage of what they'd pay for a different H-1B
Everything
attorney.
is legal that
Everything's
he's
legal.
doing. Everything is written down as legal, but that's how we kind of came to this. It was a resource that you gave us, actually.
Yeah.
And you can talk about that if you want.
Yeah. I made there's a website, chand.visadata.org, where you can go deep dive all of this guy's LCAs that he's submitted. I pulled into that data on whether or not they have an active license with the state of Texas, whether like they're actually licensed to do business. I linked to the company's websites that were submitted on the LCAs. And I made a video where I go through and I show like, this is this tech company's website. Everything's misspelled. It's all fake AI pictures. The jobs are, they're a year old. It looks like when I take from his statements and I take from what I see online, it looks like the FDNS or whatever the fraud system that the USCIS uses to review these LCAs really only is concerned if there's a website.
Yeah, it
Okay.
doesn't check what's on the website.
So it looks like as long as you submit an LCA that follow, each block has data in it
Right.
where it's supposed to, and there's a website and the website loads, you're going to get rubber stamped.
Okay.
And I don't know, I got the numbers. Like if you look at this guy, how long he's had his law license, the amount of days that are average worked in a year, assuming he took no
Let's let Nick
holidays.
talk about it, and then you don't.
Yeah,
No, I like that
it's
he's
something
talking
that,
about
like
it. I like that a lot.
his case count is
He came up with
he is
it.
the most efficient lawyer I've ever met. Yeah, I've not even met him.
Okay.
But the problem that I have is they are supposed to be bona fide jobs.
And they're not.
I have a hard time thinking they're bona fide jobs.
Yeah. Okay.
When you go and visit these places and there's nobody there,
Yeah. Or it's at a suburb house.
or it's at a suburban house.
Yeah. Not to say that that's wrong, because I've got 2 LLCs tied to my apartment. And there's because you have to have an LLC for every movie that you do, and we're filmmakers, and so the best thing to do to have your own registered agent is just tie it to your home address. So like I know that's people do that,
Yeah.
but it raises more questions when you have 5 tech companies tied to one LLC and they have 50 employees listed for each tech company.
Yeah.
That's where the questions get raised.
And then when you go look at some of these tech companies that you filed the H-1Bs for, and they're sitting on these body shop websites saying, hey, I have headcount. They need work. Let's go. Right.
Gosh.
That means there's no bona fide job for them.
Yeah.
They
there's
were
not.
hired into a shell company to be an available resource for whoever gets the contract, whoever can actually put them to work.
Mm.
You were going into depth about how he's the most efficient lawyer because of the time that all of these have been approved and comparing the work hours.
Yeah, I forget the exact number that I'd have to pull it up, but I mean, you just look at the amount, assuming the man works 40-hour work weeks, assuming he took 0 holidays and he only worked on Monday through Friday with federal holidays, 200, however many days a year.
Yeah.
He's doing a case every 1.2 hours. I think I don't know.
So he's doing a lot.
You'll have to go on my X and find the exact where I broke it down. But it's insane how efficient he must be.
How long is that video?
Too long to play now.
Okay. He knew where I was going.
Yeah, it's
okay.
minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, dang, man. I was not expecting this conversation to go this direction.
Yeah.
But I'm glad
Yeah, I
it
wasn't
did.
either.
I'm glad it did, because you just basically confirmed, or not necessarily confirmed, but you shone a light. Stop coughing. Give me a cough drop.
I go away from the microphone.
It's just going to get picked up. This is going to be the most coughs we've ever had on an episode.
You'll be all right, Nick.
I will.
You'll be okay.
And I lost my train of thought. But what you shone a light on something, not necessarily confirmed, but you shone a light on something that we weren't thinking at first. Like we were thinking H-1B visa fraud, okay, bad. Let's not get this. And then we're also thinking the Muslim Brotherhood hates us, you know. And I had an epiphany one time that whenever the tribulation happens, it's going to be led by the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah.
Because what does it say in Revelation? Whenever the tribulation happens, it says that if you don't take the mark of the beast, you will be beheaded. What does the Muslim Brotherhood do whenever you don't convert? They take your head.
Says it in their book.
Yeah.
Says it
And
in
so
the
I'm
Quran.
thinking, crap, that's what's going to happen. But now you've inserted something we weren't even thinking, which is human trafficking. Like this is literally bodies being trafficked.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
what does trafficking mean? Right. It's like it's moving bodies,
people. Yeah. Moving
people,
bodies.
right?
Wow.
For the
And
sake,
yeah.
and there's many, like obviously we know there's many different types of trafficking. They could be doing it to benefit a company. They could be doing it to benefit themselves.
Right.
They could be doing it for a greater plan within America.
Oh my God.
Whoever's in charge.
Oh
so
my
there's
God.
just like many different ways or reasons people are being trafficked into the country.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It just
I mean-
seems like the H-1B happens to be benefiting corporate companies that can make
Well,
money.
Corporate companies
and-
and themselves. You go ahead.
And globalist
Yes.
interest, right? Like, how do you weaken America, right? If you want to be globalist, you want to have a bunch of weak countries, weak nations. How do you weaken a nation? You dilute its homogeny. You
No way.
bring in sects of people that will vote as blocks, which will never you're not going to get that cohesion. You're not going to get assimilation. And you bring it in at such a clip or such a fast rate that assimilation never becomes an option.
So
No.
now we're talking about one world order. All of this is leading to
Well, no, it's not
That.
leading to one world order. It's leading to the downfall of the U.S.
Didn't
Yeah, weakening
Greg
of our
mention-
position.
Yeah,
for
that's
sure.
exactly. Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
one world order is. You can't do that if you don't weaken the U.S.
Weaken the U.S. because we're the most powerful military force. on
Doesn't
the face
Greg
of the planet.
Abbott go to the World Economic Forum like every?
I'm sure he
meeting?
does, but there's no necessarily proof of like because a lot of politicians go to the World
That's fair.
Economic Forum,
Yeah.
you know. So it's not something like if he went like, oh, you know, because I'm learning when it comes to Greg Abbott, like I said last time, he kind of does stuff whenever he sees a good response from somebody else. Like if he sees Ron DeSantis, why can't I ever say his name right? Ron DeSantis.
Well, didn't Florida just announce something today about H-1B visas?
I like Ron.
Yeah,
I like Ron a
swear-
lot too.
Yeah,
He's great.
But that's the thing.
Florida.
Like, I want Ron to be the governor of Texas.
Yeah.
Because Ron takes initiative. Greg sees Ron do it and be like, "Oh, let me do that," because he's having a good response.
Governor Ron DeSantis orders Florida universities to end H-1B visa use, citing audits showing foreign hires, including from China, from public policy rules. We can do it with Americans.
I mean,
Okay.
that's right though. You know,
Yeah.
the H-1Bs are. It goes back to they're using the visa system just to extend people here, right? So
Yeah.
these H-1B hires at universities are typically the F1 students, right? They go into the OPT program.
Yeah,
They exhaust their OPT window. They need to be kept. Their homie in the academic office creates a job for them as an H-1B.
Yeah.
They're now here getting tax dollars funding their stay unnecessarily. And then it builds
Yeah.
this narrative that, oh, they're at our institutions, right? We've got, the head of this academic program is an H-1B. We're going to lose this program. No, dude, you only have them in that role because it allows them to stay, right? And they had to hook up to that role.
Yeah, I'm going to say this because I know a lot of Christians and people in Texas. They've come into my comment section and my DMs, and they just said I moved away to get away from this, and I want to exhort everybody, if I can, right now. You cannot run from the problem. So, like, I even had a thought when you're explaining this, and Ron DeSantis is so great. It made me think maybe I should just move to Florida, but that would not be helping the issue. You know what I mean? So, like, if we're in Texas and we have this problem, we need to bring it to light. And we need to do something about it. We can't just sit on the sidelines anymore.
Yeah, we can't just move to another city because it's
Right.
not there, because it's going to come there eventually.
Right.
You can't run from the problem. That's a really good way.
And
to
I
put
want to
it.
make sure that that's nailed down. Nick, you've blown my mind.
Appreciate it.
And right now, I don't know much about, is it Dan? Dave.
Dan.
Dan
Yeah,
Crenshaw.
Crenshaw.
I don't know much about Dan Crenshaw other than he has an eye patch.
Yeah.
And the Democrats really roasted him one time. But other than that, I know he's a Republican. But you're doing something that it seems like no one else wants to tackle. And with the depth that it is, can I vote for him? Or no. Okay. If I could, you would have my vote.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, the great thing about you is that you showed evidence. You did the research, and you're letting everyone else see the same exact evidence. It's not something that you're trying to do this as an ideology thing. You're not doing it with emotion. This is all objective. Yeah. This is stuff that you wanted everyone to be able to see, and now we can because of the work that you've already done. And then I would say that any other interview that you do, point of advice, learn to make it dumber.
Got it.
Yeah.
Dumb it down. Yeah.
Dumb it down for people like me. Like I can sit here and listen to you and understand it, but when it comes to I want to re-explain this to people, I wouldn't be able to do that until we clicked at the very end. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, now it's all coming together. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Yeah, and also thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Did your daughter get into college, man?
Yeah, she's a full ride in Northern Colorado.
All right.
So it wasn't wasn't that she didn't have opportunity. It's that she worked hard to get to UT, where she that was her goal.
Yeah.
She did everything right to get to that goal, and they took that from her, and it pissed me off a lot.
Yeah. I'm glad you were pissed off.
Yeah,
I'm glad because it's led you to down the road that you're on now, and I think that was kind of God's divine plan, was to not only did it help mold your daughter, but it's helping molding you.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so you're going to be able to take this newfound information, and you're going to be able to go before Congress. And I pray, Lord, that you will get all the votes you need to win that Senate seat.
I appreciate that.
So anything else? Anybody 100%. Else want to? Go ahead. What?
I was giving you my 100% agreement.
Oh, okay. You used less words than that. I'm proud of you, Nick. Anything else? Anything last?
No, I feel like I learned a lot today.
Yeah.
It makes my brain want to explode, but
it makes my brain want to explode in the way of when you insert human trafficking. That's what blew my mind. That is incredible. And not only that, but they're systematically trying to take over the U.S.
Yeah.
And I wasn't implementing that into the Hindu side or the Indian side or the H-1B visa side. I was implementing that for the Muslim Brotherhood, no problem, because I know they hate us.
Yeah.
I wasn't even thinking the other side.
No, it's full circle, and wow. it doesn't stop at the jobs. They get involved in politics.
Yeah.
I'll leave it with this. I was on a candidate forum last week with 3 congressional districts in Houston, all being represented, 2, 38, and 8. And not saying anything about the people, but each one of them has a non-American born candidate running. And a lot of times, in at least one of those cases, that was the only candidate on stage. You can't actually act like you care about this stuff and not be involved, right? You can't act like you care about this stuff and not vote. I know running isn't for everybody. It's not for me, but someone has to do it, right? And if you actually care about the nation, I think it's time for more people to get involved.
Oh, absolutely.
And as I went through all these vetting things, the organizations are 70 years old and up, right? Everyone sitting there doing the vetting, telling you who to vote for is 70 years and up, and they don't have the same interest as me. They're in a different place in life. They don't have the same technical acumen. They don't understand what's going on. If we want to save the nation for ourselves, for the millennials, the Zoomers, the Gen Xers, whatever, we've got to get involved. We can't have a Congress built of non-American born representatives.
Yeah, I agree.
God, that's discouraging.
Yeah.
It's discouraging, but I think it's a call to action.
Let it motivate you, because the people who are going to watch this, they should get pissed. They should be upset, but that should motivate them enough to actually go out and do something, whether it's utilizing the investigation tool or running for Congress or running in their local area for something. Because if you can get these people to start at the local level, like the opponents are doing, like the enemies are doing, then you have an equal chance to fight them, instead of just seeing a bunch of Indian signs on the side of the road that are people running for local city councils or stuff, and just letting them do it. Yeah. You actually have to get involved and do something about it.
Yeah. And you don't have to be anti anything. You can be pro America.
Yeah.
right? Like that is all I am. Is I am pro America and pro American Texans first. Like it's not anti anything, and I think people have to realize that it's okay to be pro us.
Well, to be pro America is not to be anti something else. It's pro America.
Yes.
You know, and so it's not Islamophobia. And if that's what Islamophobia is, then, paint me as pro America or Islamophobia. I don't care. Anyway, thank you guys for coming. Nick's Right Podcast. I'm not going to go through our sponsors. We have gone way over time. Thank you, Michael, for being awesome. Yeah.
Getting that overtime pay.
We're going to see you guys next time. Make sure to, if you're in District 2, vote for Nick Plumb. He's got my vote, even though I can't vote over there. But vote for Nick Plumb. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Kaylee. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, man.
Thank
Y'all
you.
were awesome. Yeah. Very educational. I'm enlightened.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's hard to do. Hard to do.
No, it's not. It's not that hard. I can be enlightened.
All right. We'll see you guys next time.
Appreciate you.
Bye.